1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Start
8.
the
Yeah, we have
webinar.
everybody. Okay. Call to order the September 8th, 2020 regular Board of Aldermen meeting. Would everyone please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Roll call, please, Kelly.
Okay. Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman O'Neill.
Here.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderman Weggie.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
And Alderman Ebling.
Here.
Ebeling. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is item 3. We have no announcements, appointments, proclamations, and recognitions. So we'll move down to item 4, public hearings. We do have one. And with that, I will gavel open the public hearing for Planning and Zoning case number 20-04, amendment of the conditional use permit for the Brentwood Promenade to permit a recreational use for video games for property located at 83 Brentwood Promenade Court. The petitioner is 5 below. Anybody in the audience or the public care to address this matter, this P&Z case number 20-04, now is your time to do so. I think just raise your hand if you, we have one, I think Anthony
Perno.
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Anthony Perno. I represent the petitioner in this particular case, both 5 Below and Nerd Street Gamers. We have a group of people joining us as attendees this evening that will help us do the presentation. Just for purposes of how you would like to proceed, Your Honor, I'm assuming we can just go with a couple of slides that I'll share on my screen, but I'm going to have Tom McCracken from Nerd Street Gamers kind of walk through it. I'd also like just to introduce with you, just so you know, everybody who's in attendance with us this evening. I have Jennifer Hagan and Glenn Fink, both representing 5 Below. I have Keith Fitz, who is representing Site Centers, the landlord of the facility in this particular matter, also in attendance this evening, as well as Tom McCracken, the CFO, Tiana Walters, General Counsel, and Joel Velarde, Vice President of Operations for Nerd Street Gamers, which is the subtenant in this particular facility.
Okay, well, first of all, welcome, everybody. But secondly, Mr. Perno, I think what I would like to do is wait to take that up.
Okay.
We're going to take up under the item 11A, I believe it is. So if we could wait for the presentation until that point, and at this point, all we're trying to do is see if anybody in the public cares to address that as part of the public hearing.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Everybody likes to run their meetings differently, you know. So, Kelly, do you see anybody wants to? I don't have anybody.
We do not have anyone else raising their hand.
Okay, and with that, I will gavel close the public hearing for P&Z case number 20-04. Okay, next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes or modifications to the agenda? Any objection to approving by acclamation? Seeing none, it will be so approved. Thank you. Next up is citizens' comments, item 6. Anybody in the public care to address the board? Now is the time to do so. You will be given up to 3 minutes.
There is no one raising their hand at this point.
Okay, thank you. That moves on to item 7, mayor and alderman reports. The mayor's report, I have just a couple of things. Both of them are I think, very good news. And Craig's going to be talking about one, I think, a little more in depth in the Brentwood Bound report. But in an effort to try and steal his thunder, I'm going to talk about it first. Today, I attended the GRG meeting where they took up the possible contract or agreement with Brentwood for the $3 million grant, and they voted on it. And I'm happy to report that they unanimously approved the contract. So that's $3 million, folks, that we just received today as a result of the efforts of Craig working with the GRG, and this is great news. That's all I can say about it. There's been a lot of work going back. Last year, I appeared in front of them to make the presentation, and we were always concerned about it, but we felt strongly that we were going to get this. We made a good case for it, and there actually were no questions, if I remember correctly. It went straight through. The other piece of news is at the St. Louis County COVID oversight meeting today, there was some discussion about as you know now, the $47 million that Sam Page has earmarked for the municipalities out of the original $173 million CARES Act funds. All indications are that they're just going to go ahead and distribute it on a pro rata basis, which is a huge win for us, because some of the formulas that they were looking at, because of our strength in our sales tax revenue relative to a lot of other municipalities, we were looking at getting hardly any of that $47 million. If it goes through on a pro rata basis, as they talked about today, we should probably receive just a little over $500,000 of that $47 million. So that's $3.5 million that we can talk about coming in, hopefully, to our coffers. With that, I have no further report. Alderwoman Eveline, any report?
No report.
Alderman Gould.
No report, just a comment about appreciation for our police department and inviting the board to participate in the officer training. I know a lot of us that did go were really pleased to see the diligence and dedication that they've put out there for making sure that they're prepared for every possible scenario that might come forward, and practice the de-escalation tactics that are so needed in today's climate. So I appreciate that. And, that's it.
Thank you, Alderman Gould. Alderman Lockmuller.
I too would like to thank the police department chief for allowing us to attend the training that was put on by Sergeant Gibson. It was also interesting to notice they all wearing body cameras and having to navigate those. So it was great to attend and see how those guys go through their training, and they are well trained by our chief. Thank you.
Sure. Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes, thank you. The board is following Dr. Page's guidelines and has stepped back from the service they were doing. They are now back to curbside delivery. Order online when you're in the parking lot, and they bring it to you. So we regret that it's a step back, but they are still working what they can.
All right. Alderman Plufka.
No report.
Alderwoman Sims.
No report.
Alderwoman Tice.
No report.
And Alderman Weggie.
Yeah, we have a Public Works meeting on Thursday, the 10th at 6 p.m. One item of interest on the agenda there is discussion about establishing a sustainability advisory committee. So heads up on that. And other than that, no report.
Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is the city administrator report. We have two items. The first is Brentwood Bound update. Craig handling that?
Yes.
All right, Craig Schluter with Navigate Building Solutions. I'll be providing the Brentwood Bound update. Starting off with the general update, starting with construction costs, total spent total spent since the last Board of Aldermen meeting is $248,083.40. And that is for Marshall Wrecking that's working on demo package 1B. Next is soft costs. Total spent since the last Board of Aldermen meeting is $341,634.73. And that was on flood mitigation and Deer Creek Greenway Connector engineering design, project management fees, the East-West Gateway TAP grant consulting fees, property appraisals, videography services for the last groundbreaking ceremony, bid advertising, legal fees, property surveys, and Union Pacific consulting fees. Next is property acquisitions. Total spend since the last Board of Aldermen meeting is $649,378.87. And that was for reestablishment expenses and property acquisitions. And last, there was $582,800 in contingency spent, and that was on a property acquisition and the newly updated PGAV Task Order Amendment 1. Also, I updated some of the funding sources at the bottom. This is also great news to add to what the mayor presented earlier, but we learned from Arbitrage Management that they invest the city's COP funds, that there's now a gain of approximately $1.8 million on the investments that they have been managing. So the last report I gave, I was presenting $628,623. So that means in the past 3 weeks, just on reporting, we picked up close to $1.2 million in investment income. So that added also to our additional funding sources. Also, Serco, that was a property the city bought. They paid a refund to the city on some property taxes that the city paid on behalf of them. So $11,604.30 was refunded to the city. And also, as part of some of the property acquisitions, the owners had to pay rent, and the city through April of 2020 collected $3,247 in rent. So again, a lot of big pickups in the past couple weeks, and just further, putting Brentwood Bound in a good financial place. The mayor talked about the GRG partnerships. We're really excited about that. Bull and I were just reminiscing that we started discussions with them back in 2016, where we really sat down in the Brentwood City Hall conference room late 17. That's when we really started talking about what a partnership could look like, and what the amounts we were looking for. And then so it was 3 years of significant coordination. So we're really excited that that $3 million grant came to fruition today. We will bring the agreement to you all either on September 21st or October 5th. And with all of your approval, that agreement will be executed, and the city should start receiving funds in 2021, with the remaining funds being received in 2022. So again, great news to add to everything else going on. And then lastly, I mentioned this briefly earlier, we're gonna have a groundbreaking ceremony on October 7th in Norm West Park. So we'll be outdoors. The city's doing a lot of research to make sure that the event is put on safely. We'll have masks, we'll be doing rosters, we'll be coordinating this with St. Louis County, doing temperature checks. So we're gonna make sure it's a safe event, but at the same time, Alderman Wege brought this up at the last meeting. This is the largest contract the city's ever approved. So we believe that, it is important to have a groundbreaking ceremony to celebrate this monumental step that the city's taking on solving some flooding issues. So again, October 7th at noon, there will be more information that'll be coming out through social media, through brentwoodbound.org, as we continue to work on the plans for that. So before I turn it over to Eric, are there any other questions for me?
Alderman Wege has one.
Yeah, I mean, I would just like to say Bola and Craig and everybody else who helped with this. I mean, congratulations on $3 million grant. I know we have viewed that as likely and coming, but it feels really good to have that bird in hand instead of something that's out there. So congratulations. And then just Craig, one question. When we started this journey on the Great Rivers Greenway, we were told that we were the first community that was kind of self-funding our own Great Rivers, expansion as opposed to waiting for them. Is there still recognition of that? Is that still a true sentiment that we can kind of communicate to our constituents?
Yeah, I haven't heard of any other situations like Brentwood, where you guys are doing your own park and trail, and they were sending you money to help support that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep.
Alderman Plufka.
Thank you. I want to echo what Alderman Wege said. It's a tremendous accomplishment, and as Craig points out, it's 3 years in the making. It's great. My question is, will that $3 million or portions of it begin to be reflected in the sheet that you've got in front of us tonight once that money begins arriving? Or I know it was just announced today, so I mean, I know it wasn't going to be included in today's setup, but will that
Sure.
come as the money arrives?
So I'll update the additional funding sources once you all execute the agreement. So
Okay.
if I bring it to you all on the 21st and you execute it, then October 5th.
It'll be reflected there. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, I just went on mute on by accident. Yeah, so the first meeting after you approve it all, it'll show up at the bottom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Anybody else have any questions for Craig? Okay, you said something about turning it over to Eric?
Yes, Eric, I believe you're going to share your screen and he's going to provide an update on the new maintenance projections for Brentwood Bound.
Okay.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Craig. I'm just going to give a quick update on the maintenance budget for Brentwood Bound. We're going to talk a little bit about the revisit the maintenance budget from June 2019 during the work session and talk about what we've been working on since then. Just as a quick reminder, this slide is just a update of something you saw in June that just shows the additional 31.18 acres of green space will be getting as part of Brentwood Bound, and how excited staff is to be looking forward to this green space. In June of 2019, we presented this slide here that showed $466,000 was our estimate for cost park maintenance. We based that on kind of our per acre maintenance cost that we currently have in 2019 budget, lake maintenance, and some other factors. So it includes staffing, and we did talk about the fact that it would increase our budget about 57% for park maintenance. So since then, a couple things have happened. Just last month, Jacobs presented the city with an operation and maintenance manual for Deer Creek. It defines the maintenance activities. It establishes schedules for inspections and maintenance activities, and also, more importantly, develops a cost estimate for all those activities. So that's something we've been working with Jacobs. Jacobs did all the heavy lifting on this one. The manual did not include landscaping on Manchester Road or any unfunded Normuck Park projects. So if we do any of those, we'd have to reconsider the maintenance cost of that time. And so what we discovered is through the maintenance and manual, we are projecting a $315,000 maintenance cost per year. We also did a quick estimate about $30,000 here and there for Manchester Road, which brings us to a yearly total of $345,000 for park maintenance with the new Brentwood Bound. The good news is that is a reduction of a little over $100,000 since we brought this to you guys in June. Again, if we approve any unfunded projects later, we'll have to update this operation and maintenance budget to reflect those new projects. So there's that caveat, but right now we're in pretty good shape. A couple things, again, this is a slide that you guys saw during last June, but a couple things I just want to point out was one thing that we did not mention last June, and something I had forgotten about, is that we are still paying certificates of participation on the rec center, and those will be paid off in 2024. So that will actually free up an additional $550,000 in the recreation and stormwater budget. So when we talked about how would we fund it, there's again a great chance there to recognize some more funding. The other thing we talked about last time is maintenance endowments. Again, I think I'm a big proponent of this because it does enable consistent investment to kind of pool money for future maintenance costs and capital projects. A lot of the things in the operations manuals are things that will come 10, 15, 20 years, 5 years later. And to be able to start pulling up some money so that we have that and don't have to tap into our budget on a regular basis could be beneficial for the city. Ways we could do that is utilize any unused economic development sales tax, a portion of it, all of it. I think that could be discussed. If we do naming rights for Northwest Park, we could add endowment funding in that. And the least likely, although there are a few, is some endowment grant opportunities. There's just not many of those around. So kind of the next steps would be just that we're starting to build our budget. We'll start building accounting for the maintenance budget in about 2023, which means that during this year's budget cycle, you'll start seeing those dollar amounts reflected in 2023. And then if you're interested in an endowment maintenance funding plan, we can bring that back to the board in October for consideration. So that's a very quick update, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Pluska.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Eric, you had mentioned unfunded projects not being a part of this, and I know that this goes back to something that's being tabled on this agenda. But I'm just curious more than anything else, has Great Rivers Habitat Alliance contacted you in any way to talk about what their expectations were for yearly maintenance of the wetlands they propose?
We have talked about the funding of it. I believe the overall maintenance was included in the operations manual, so that is included in that yearly maintenance cost.
And how much is that broken out annually or broken out for the total of the 10 years?
I can get that dollar amount for you. Unfortunately, I don't have that with right in this second.
That's fine. We're not talking about it tonight. If it could be something you could get for us in the next couple of weeks, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thanks very much.
I'm putting that in my weekly report if you'd like.
That would be great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Bola.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to add that it was always the city's plan to put in these plants, as part of the landscape. So what the partnership with Great Rivers Habitat does is it allows another entity to fund that cost for the city. It was always the city's intention to put in wetland type plants. So in our meetings with Planning Design Studio, that was always included. So I just wanted to point out that this is nothing new. It was part of the plan. And with this partnership, what they're doing is funding the cost that would have been borne by the city to purchase these plants.
So, Your Honor, I have a question based on that comment by the city administrator. Is the $20,000, the agreement calls for the grading, there's a number of different construction costs that are contemplated in the agreement along with the maintenance. Is the $20,000 a number they picked based on what you told them the cost would be, or how did they get that number?
It's just based on the acreage, because it's bigger than that. It's just based on the small acreage where they're going to be funding the cost of those plants. So we can provide additional information that Planning Design Studio provided to the city, but this is just a fraction of the total cost that the city would have to undergo to, put in plants for all that area.
Okay, thanks.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
That confuses me a bit because I thought what I read in the materials that came out was that they would also fund a boardwalk and some educational exhibits that apparently weren't in the plans. Did I read that wrong?
So that's in addition to it.
Yeah, not a boardwalk, but a sign, just an educational sign.
No boardwalk?
Not for this wetland.
Well, that could be a great addition.
Okay, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves on that because that's going to be on the agenda, I think, October 5th. Alderman Gould.
Sorry, Eric, it would be, I don't want to cause you to go through any unnecessary steps, but it would be nice to at least have a ranking of priority of the unfunded projects of what would be the most expensive additional maintenance costs to the plans, just as we're considering potential budgeting and funding for those particular items. So it'd be nice to know kind of where each one of those stands and they itemize out, if that's possible.
Yeah, I'm sure I can work with Craig and we'll be able to provide you something.
Yeah, just high level. I don't expect it to be broken down into minutia.
Great.
Okay, anyone else have any questions for Eric or Craig? If not, we will move on to the next item, which is financial monthly statement. I guess, Karen, you're taking that?
Yes. I believe there's a memo in your packet that
this is what we presented to the Ways and Means at the September. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. I can hear you
Okay.
fine.
Okay. At the September 3rd meeting last week, and it was through July because we don't have August closed yet. So this is just a overview of our list, the things that are kind of not concerning, but just to point out. So at this point, revenue should be at 42% or less of collections, and expenditures at 42% or more left to spend. So based on that, the chart that you have, it starts with the general fund. It references page numbers because the Ways and Means did get a financial statement. But for the first one was the fines, basically there's 3 line items, and that is just based on tickets written. Then there's the trash pickups that are under budget, COVID related. Same for the next one, which is the intergovernmental revenue, which is what we collect from Brentwood schools for our SRO officer and for, I think, 2 crossing guards, since they didn't have school at the end of the year. They just started back. That revenue, we haven't collected much of that revenue. Weed cutting cleanup, same thing, was COVID related. The festival revenue, we won't collect any of that because that's mainly from sponsor donors and such, and we're not doing the festival revenue. Late premium, that's the same thing every year, will not come until later in the year. But overall, general fund revenues are still pretty much on budget. Same for the total general expenditures. They are again on budget, and that can pretty much be attributed to many of the cost containments that were put into place in March or April. For capital, the revenues are under budget at 47%. Part of that, though, is still the money we're waiting to collect for Rosalie, I think, the STP. And then for capital expenditures, again, they are under budget because of COVID. You will probably see that change if the cost containments are approved, some of them tonight. Economic development, that's been reported previously, but basically the #1 goal of that fund is to pay the debt service, and we feel we're right on target. I think we may have already met it, or we're close to the final payment we need to make. Parks and Rec, they are under budget at 91%. Their sales tax is okay, but that fund's also made up from program revenues, and we refunded lots of revenue over the past several months for programs that were canceled. The overall expenditures are under budget at 85%, cost containment, and also particularly capital items that Eric held off on getting. Sewer improvement is actually doing better than it has in the past. I don't think we've had as many sewer issue cleanouts and such this year, but so it's pretty much on budget. With that said, I will answer any questions or any comments or anything, but this is what was presented at Ways and Means.
Okay, do we have any questions for Karen on these? Okay, great. Thank you very much, Karen. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. And we have...
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry,
Who is
before we
that?
move off of the
Yeah.
city administrator's report, I had a question for the city administrator, not having to do with the budget.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Bola, the RFP with regard to the hiring of an insurance consultant closed on August 28th. And I was just curious as to what the timing might be for when that might come to the board for voting.
So we only had one submittal. And we are in the process, Jason Coates and I, reviewing that. So our goal would be to present that at the next Ways and Means meeting, and then following that to the board.
So would it be likely that it would go at that kind of a timing? It'd be likely to go to the board sometime in October.
Possibly, yes.
Okay, thanks very much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Anyone else? Okay, great. Then we'll move on to item 9, the consent agenda. We have 10 items. Anybody have any requests, any questions on any of these items, or a request to remove any of these items from the consent agenda? Alderman Weggie.
I'm just totally confused about item E. We keep saying it's on hold, but on the agenda, it's looking for action of consent, correct?
That's a very good point. Yes, Bola, what are we doing on that? You're muted, Bola.
How about now? When
There we
you look at that item under synopsis, you see an item in bold. Do you see that under synopsis? Do you see that? And it says a request from Great Rivers Habitat Alliance to place this item on hold until the September 21st meeting. The board seeks to make one change to the agreement, and we would request that the city attorney O'Keefe review the change. So the reason why it's still on there is because for me to remove it would have required me to revise the agenda and repost it. And I was looking to avoid that step. So instead, I put this notice on there. We've done that in the past. So when you vote on the items on the consent agenda, you are not voting on items 9D and 9E. Both of those items are on hold. There's a similar text on 9D asking that that also be placed on hold. Do you see that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Hey, Mr. City Attorney,
yeah,
if you can. Before you got to the meeting, there was some discussion about item 9E, and right now it's scheduled to be back in front of the board on September 21st. Alderman Plufka had asked if we could move it to the next meeting, which would be October the 5th. If we leave this item on the consent agenda as is, does it have to show up on September 21st, or do we need to have some action to have it moved to October 5th, or can we just place it on October 5th?
Are you talking about just E or both E and D?
Just E.
I think, well, first of all, I think it would be better for there be a motion to table the matters before the consent agenda is voted on. So if you want to table item E, I would suggest a motion to table to the desired date. And if you want item D to roll over to the next agenda, then I would suggest just table it to the next agenda.
Okay. Alderman Plufka, do you care to make a motion to table item E to October 5th?
Yeah, assuming I can get my dog to calm down, yes.
Seconded by your dog.
I would make a motion to table item D to the September 21st meeting of the Board of Aldermen, and I would further make a motion to table item E to the October 5th meeting of the Board of Aldermen.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. No, I'm
okay.
for it.
I believe the motion carries 8-0 to table both items D and E. So with that, and seeing we have no other questions about the remaining items on the consent agenda, can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Alderwoman O'Neill, seconded by Alderwoman Sims. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
She's muted.
Not for long, is it? You're still muted.
I got it.
There we go. Okay.
There we are. Thanks. Sorry. Alderwoman Tice,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman Ebling.
She's gone.
Did we lose her? I don't see her.
I don't see her either.
She's been kidnapped.
Yes, I think she is gone. Okay, well, we're just going to go ahead and take the vote. I think it was, so we had 7-0.
7. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then the consent, oh, there we go. Before we call it, Alderwoman
Alderwoman Ebling.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Consent agenda passes count of 8-0. Next on the agenda is old business. We have just one. That's bill number 6296.1. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read by title only, please?
Do we have amendments to this? Mr. Mayor, I believe we have Bill 6296.1. And I think a motion to amend by that text would be in order before second reading.
Okay. Can we get a motion to amend 6296, or get a motion, whatever all the city attorney said, how he phrased it? Can we get a motion along those lines?
A motion to amend Bill 6296 by the text of Bill number 6296.1, including the exhibit.
Yeah.
So
the words out of my mouth. Yeah.
Second.
So moved.
Okay. We had a motion by Alderman Plufka, seconded by Alderwoman Tice, I believe. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. All right, Mr. City Attorney.
Bill number 6296 as amended, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance to amend Chapter 500, Buildings and Building Regulations, to add Article 17, Infill Development Stormwater Management.
Okay. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect Bill number 6296.1 into ordinance form.
So moved.
Got a motion by Alderman Lockmuller, seconded by Alderwoman Tice. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman Ebling.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. At this time, actually, I do want to thank everybody who worked on that legislation. I mentioned it last week on Friday, and just for those who, the 3 people who didn't get a chance to read that post, I do wanted to thank everybody who worked on this, especially the Public Works Committee. This is something that we've been talking about for a number of years. It's been an issue, and hopefully this legislation that you all just passed will help to deal with the runoff that we are all well aware of that comes from new construction and remodeling. Next on the agenda is item 11, new business. We have 2 items. The first is bill number 6298. Can we get a first read by title only, please, Mr. City Attorney?
Bill number 6298, first reading, an ordinance amending ordinance number 3258 and granting a conditional use permit for a recreational use for video games for the Brentwood Promenade, formerly the Promenade at Brentwood development, specifically for property numbered 83 Brentwood Promenade Court.
Thank you. Lisa, do you want to give us a staff report first before we have Mr. Pernod speak to this?
Sure. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Yeah, just to give you a quick briefing of this application tonight. This is going to be for a location that's in the Brentwood Promenade. It's going to be in the space that is currently occupied by Five Below. So there is kind of a connection between Five Below and this local host or this video gaming. And Five Below likes the concept and thinks this would be a good complementary use to use actually some underutilized space that's currently that Five Below has leased. And so this would take, though, an amendment to the conditional use permit. It takes an amendment to the overall CUP that was approved for the Brentwood Promenade, which talks about all of the different types of uses that are pre-approved in order to go into the development. And secondly, because of the use itself being the recreational use for video games, our code, the Brentwood code, actually specifies that particular use. And what it says is in the planned development district, which this area is zone plan development, that this type of use would require also a CUP. So for those two reasons, this requires the amendment to the CUP. This proposal, which again, we can let the applicant get into the business proposal and the use for the space, but this was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission at their August meeting. And it was approved with by the Planning and Zoning Commission, recommending it for approval with conditions by a vote of 10-0. And so again, this is only going to be using just a portion of the space currently utilized by Five Below. But with that, I'll go ahead and maybe let the representative for Five Below give their brief presentation, and then I can also be available for questions.
Great, thank you. Mr. Perno, the floor is yours.
Your Honor, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I had previously introduced a couple of people. I'm going to just let you know that there is a partnership between Five Below and Nerd Street Gamers. That partnership, as Lisa had identified, was one where we believe it's a symbiotic relationship that enables us to help draw in customers to their facility. We're really excited with that partnership. And I just want to kind of walk you through exactly what we do. We're not just a video game store. We're actually an esports training facility, which is a little bit different. And I'd like to kind of just have Tom McCracken explain that. I'm going to pull up our presentation. And if someone could just unmute Tom McCracken, who's on one of the listed attendees. Maybe he could.
He raised his hand. Okay.
Hello. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Terrific.
Can you see my screen?
I can. Thanks, Anthony. And thanks, everybody, for their time tonight. My name is Tom McCracken. I'm the CFO of Nerd Street Gamers. I just want to take a few minutes to introduce who we are, our partnership with Five Below, and our local host concept that we're looking to install and open in Brentwood. First, a little history about us. We're founded in 2017, and we opened our first location that year. Over the next couple of years, we added a bunch of investors to our group, a couple noteworthy ones there, Comcast and Five Below. Over the past year, we've been developing a new format of our local host store with Five Below, and we're now piloting a bunch of those locations right now. This location would be the third pilot location that we're looking to open with Five Below. We just opened last month our first location in Austin, Texas. In addition to stores, we also do media and event production. Just a few months ago, we did for ESPN their Celebrity Madden Challenge. We've also done some production for a few traditional sports teams, as well as a number of esports pro teams as well. Last month, we were nominated for 2 Emmys for a linear TV show that we produced called For the Win in partnership with NBC Sports. Here on the side, what is esports? I'd like to start there. It's a term thrown around a bit, and it pretty simply means competitive video gaming. Just as you think about traditional sports, baseball, basketball, it is gaming competitively, typically on a personal computer or a console being Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo. It's a growing business, did about $1 billion worldwide last year and continues to grow pretty tremendously. Anthony, next slide. But esports has an accessibility problem, and that's in large part what we're trying to fix on a few different fronts. Anthony, just go back for a moment. So first, from a competitive gamer perspective, if you want to get into esports and game competitively, there's many barriers of entry. You can't really game from home because there's integrity issues. You'd also need about $5,000 worth of equipment. So our facilities lowered the barrier of entry to get involved and game competitively. And also because it's a relatively new industry, unlike traditional sports where there's little league, high schools, and university programs, a lot of that doesn't yet exist within esports. So the workforce also doesn't exist. So we have a number of training programs and development programs and camps also to foster that infrastructure from a workforce perspective. Next slide, Anthony. So our solution from a business model perspective, kind of a three-prong approach: facilities, events, content. So from a facilities perspective, that's simply our local host location, what we're looking to open here in Brentwood. Events is the programming, so the daily tournaments that we run, the camps, the after-school programs, et cetera, et cetera. And then the content is an important piece to this as well, because that infrastructure doesn't exist. The little leagues, the high schools, the university programs, at the scale of traditional sports, a lot of ways to get noticed is via content. So think live streams to YouTube, live streams to Twitch. So the content is an important piece to the model here. You can go to the next slide, Anth. It's a little bit more about our business here. Next slide, Anth. So local host, just a few things I wanted to note, and then I'll turn it back to Anthony to go through some of the zoning questions. First, actually, here's a few pictures of our facility we just opened in Austin, very similar facility that we'd look to open adjacent to the Five Below in Brentwood. But two things I wanted to note. One, our facilities to date, what we call our regional facilities, are much bigger facilities where you might have spectators, bigger media production. What we're looking to open here is a much more intimate retail type location. There would be spectators. The only media production that would happen is there's one or two fixed cameras on that stage. Otherwise, it's really for those training development programs, the daily tournaments that we're running for the competitive gamers, and things of that nature. And then also, lastly, and probably most importantly, I've mentioned gaming quite a few times, but you know, local host and these types of facilities are far from an arcade for a lot of different reasons. Number one, there's only one point of sale. So when you come into our location, you have to register, you have to become a member. So we always know at any point in time who's in our facility, unlike an arcade. So it's a membership model. We also do a bit of virtual gaming, meaning you could be gaming with somebody in another location, another one of our local hosts. And lastly, and most importantly, I've touched on a few times, is the educational and development programs and opportunities that we offer that, again, you wouldn't have at a gaming facility or an arcade facility. So with that, I'll turn it over to Anthony to hit some of the zoning questions.
Thank you very much, Tom. I appreciate that. I just want to kind of walk you through the actual project here, a little bit about how we would actually operate. As we mentioned, there are different types of concepts. This is our smaller concept, which is basically an introductory type model of how to get people into the gaming industry. What you see here is the Five Below store. It's labeled number 87 on the drawing here. That Five Below store is approximately almost 13,000 square feet. We would be taking up approximately 3,000 square feet of that space, and you can see the green inset is literally our layout. Same type of door entrance. When you first walk in, you have a choice between going directly into our space or into the Five Below space, with a portal design, as you see here, that connects us with the Five Below internally. So here's the main entrance as you walk in, and then you can kind of go around to come in to see if you want to go straight or to the side into the Five Below. Our hours of operation, one of the things that we conditioned the zoning board application with is that our hours of operation would be similar to that of the Five Below. When the Five Below is open, we would be open. The Five Below is closed, we're closed. We had no problem with that. We thought that was an appropriate model because we see ourselves as a synergistic opportunity with Five Below. One of the things that we see here is that right now, people are moving more towards online shopping. And so we're trying to create inelastic opportunities where people can come and have an experience, and while they're there say, wait a second, I also need to get some shopping done. And so make the shopping very easy to utilize. So we actually believe Five Below will benefit from this. We think micro centers, which is next door and is a complementary use, will also benefit from this as we move forward. And we're really excited about those types of partnerships as we proceed with this project. The space actually is, by the code, is allowed to have 84 people in this space. We're actually not seeking that. The other thing we conditioned upon was that we would only have 62 people as a maximum capacity. We did that because we don't foresee ourselves having more than 62 people in the space. As you can see, the space is fairly tight. It's linear in design, does not allow for a lot of spectators, and that has to deal with the integrity of the sports game. You'll notice that our desks are organized in groups of 6. They're aligned on a vertical plan. We can't have people wandering around, walking through the facility, accidentally bumping into one of the gamers, which would then ruin their game. And so for that reason, we really want to limit the capacity. So we limited it to the capacity of the people that are actually seated at the desk. So that's 62 is a maximum capacity. That assumes that we have every single seat filled and that the waiting area is also filled to capacity, which is approximately 10 people. Plus that includes our staff of 2 for this particular site, 2 to 4. From a parking standpoint, the Five Below site for this 3,000 square feet already accounts for 10 parking spaces. What we have found is that because this is a team-oriented sport, the reason why we organize the seating in groups of 6 is that most of the games that are competitive in play are played in groups of 6. So you have a team of 6 people that are working together to accomplish a specific thing, and those people will play and train together even outside of this facility. One of the things we see here is an opportunity that, or what we have found from all of our sites, is that we actually have an average per person vehicle count of people who coming or arrive here don't drive by themselves. They drive with other people. And we get about 2.5 to 3.25 people per vehicle on those travel points. We also find that in our other areas, about 40% of the people are coming by some type of car share or walking or biking, with the majority of that being by car share. We don't know what that figure will be here at this location, but even if you were to say that everybody drove by car and they met our average car attendance, the total parking for this facility would be 25 cars, 10 of which are already accounted for within the site. If you account for Five Below's total space of 13,000 square feet is already accounting for close to 52 parking spaces at this location. And so between us and Site Centers, we've had a great conversation around the fact that we think that parking really will be met and be more than sufficient for this particular site. And so we did have that conversation. And then the average attendance at our site is that, usually people will stay several hours when they do play. So it's not a high turnover rate for the vehicles. And finally, 2/3 of all of our players are between the age of 18 and 44. And that's the majority of our cohort of people who actually come. So this is one of the things we're trying to do is actually develop that younger age cohort as well at the same time. And we see our partnership being able to accomplish that. But simultaneously, we do know there's going to be a number of older people who will access and play these esports games. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Site Centers just to talk a little bit more about parking and the operation of the facility, because I think it's important for you to hear from the landlord and why they think this actually will work. At this time, I'm going to ask Keith Fitz to make some comments. If you could unmute Keith, I think he might be raising his hand.
Oops. Okay. He's unmuted. Tom?
No, not Tom. Keith Fitz.
Not Tom.
Yeah, I apologize. I think his hand's raised.
Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Good evening. This is Keith Fitz from Site Centers. I'm the Director of Tenant Coordination. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Aldermen and Alderwomen, for taking the time to hear us. We're very excited to partner up and be a partner with local host at Five Below. Five Below is one of our biggest tenants across the country. And we are very excited to be a partner with them and doing this new concept. As far as parking, we are right now at a ratio of 4 to 1, which is pretty much average in our shopping center portfolio across the country. And I did some research recently, and I asked our property management team, who is a Sandstone group who is on site, and our property manager who works in conjunction with them. In the past 5 years, I think we've only had two complaints, and those complaints were based off of Dodd, which is at the automotive center. And the problem is mostly in the morning when the customers for Dodd park their cars, you then walk over to the service center, and it takes some time for the service center to go get those cars and take them into their facility. So as of today, we reached out to Micro Center and we reached out to Dodd and let them know that we were going to be watching this very closely and making sure that they get together and we can identify areas that if we do let them use our parking lot, they'll put their cars in the area that we mutually agree upon. But other than those issues, we've had no other people contact our property management team had any issues at all with parking. So if you have any questions.
Mr. Perno, does this the end of the presentation?
For all intents and purposes, yes. And we're open to any questions. I have five below here as well.
Yeah, I just didn't want to cut anybody off.
Nope.
So with that, folks, you got everybody here in front of you, and I think we're just doing a first reading tonight. So it would be best if you had any questions to ask them tonight, because we're not sure if we're going to have a complete team at the next meeting. Alderman Lockmuller.
I'm not sure who to direct this ADA parking question to, but did this require any, maybe Lisa could tell me, additional ADA parking, or is it based just on the number of ADA based on the global parking lot for the promenade?
Sure. So ADA, it looks for two things: the number that's required, and that is basically on the total of the number of spaces provided by the development. But also with ADA, you look for the location of those spaces. So they are supposed to be in locations that are closest to the buildings, that also have a complete accessible route from the parking space to the entrance of the building. But this, again, with it being an existing building, and it does have its own, it's going to have its own primary door to get into Nerd Gamers, the local host. But the ADA parking requirements as they are currently will still meet anything with ADA requirements.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Alderwoman Ebeling, I think, had her hand up next.
Yes, I know this COVID thing isn't going to last forever, but your seating looks very tight. And I'm wondering what plans you have for keeping people separate at this time.
Alderwomen, thank you very much for asking the question. I'm going to turn it over to our general counsel, Tiana, who actually has a whole COVID plan of operations for all of the Nerd Street operations across the country. Tiana, and she's going to raise her hand. She's one of the attendees tonight.
She's available.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for your question, and thank you everyone for your time. So yes, we have been addressing the COVID protocols in each of our locations across the country. That includes identifying, first and foremost, we identify what the occupancy requirements are for the municipality and what we are required to manage in terms of overall occupancy. So first and foremost, we're managing ingress and egress in and out of the location to make sure we meet those occupancy restrictions. And then once in the facility, we have been implementing a reservation system for our computers, sure that people that would like to come and use the facility make reservations for use of a computer for certain times. So we've been using that, and also locking computers that are 6 feet away from one another so that we have the space among computers, so that we only admit the maximum we're permitted to admit based on the jurisdiction, but then also spacing out the computers and making sure we have wayfinding throughout the facility so that people have a way to maintain 6 feet distance while they're in the facility. We also have other cleaning protocols in place as well as other guards in place where 6 feet cannot be maintained. I'm happy.
Alderwoman Ebeling, does that answer your questions for you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, nothing else?
I assume they're wearing masks.
Yes, masks are required. That's correct. And we
Okay.
also have procedures in place for if a customer will not wear one and how we approach that.
Yes, that answers my question.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Plufka.
Thanks. I had a question, and maybe you covered it in the presentation, but does the ratio between the square footage of this gaming facility and the square footage of Five Below, is that ratio in this location pretty similar to the same ratios that you have in other places?
The size of our Five Below store will vary because the Five Below stores themselves vary, but yes, I mean, in short, we are looking somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 square feet for our subdivided space. This kind of hits right smack in the middle.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Alderwoman O'Neill.
Thank you. This is interesting timing because a friend's daughter last week lost her esports scholarship because of COVID and not being able to go to school. So the timing is interesting.
Oh, there was such a thing.
I have spent some time this afternoon with Bola and Lisa. My concern is parking. This is our Ward 4, and where site centers may not get the parking complaints, we do. Especially at Christmas when that whole promenade area is packed. But even now with COVID, Micro Center is getting a much larger clientele on site than before. And I know you're talking about online ordering, but people still want to see and feel and actually get something in person. So my experience the last few months has been the parking area there has been more congested than ever. How do you plan to add all these cars? And I don't for a minute think in St. Louis you're going to get 2.5 people per car. St. Louis doesn't do that. We come in different places, we drive alone. So you're going to add, let's say 30 more cars as a training schedule, but then you're going to plan an event which is going to have more people than that. Your 2012 study doesn't cut it, that's 2012. How can we justify saying yes to this when we know the parking is going to be far more intense than you think it is right now?
So I think the first thing is I just want to clarify one item, and that is the number of units we have in the building from a training standpoint doesn't increase, and we're not necessarily doing events at this location. So we're doing events in the sense that we would do like a training session or people would be competing, but there's no spectators being driven to this location. Like we're not offering to have anybody else in there. So the total capacity of this facility will always be capped at 62. So the demand is that demand. So even if we were to assume that everybody drove and only the person themselves drove that one car in there, the maximum impact is a 62 car impact at this particular location.
That's far.
I mean, I'm just going down the logic you presented. It's going to be a maximum of 62 cars at this location, but that's all the number of people that we're going to put into the facility. I really do believe that the 2.5 is actually a solid number. We actually went with our lower figure because in Denver and in Philadelphia, and actually it's a suburb of Denver. It's not even actually Denver. It's actually Lakewood, Colorado, which is a suburb outside of Denver, very similar to where you're at. What we're finding is that it's actually closer to 3.25, 3.5 people per vehicle coming because it is a team-driven sport. It would be like going to baseball and not bringing your buddy who plays baseball with you in the Little League. You wind up carpooling. I'm a parent. I have kids in the Little League. I'm always carpooling somebody else along with us because the parents just don't, whatever it is. When I go out with my buddies at night, we don't drive all by ourselves. A lot of times, like one person will hop in our car just to save it because, it's just the situation it is. Particularly if you're going to the same location, you're going to go there at the same time. You're going to leave at the same time because we have pre-scheduled timeframes. You have a scheduled time from when you kind of come in. So I think it's really important to kind of just identify those types of things that that's the reason why we think our impact of cars, even if no one came by mass transit or by some other self-share, they literally drove themselves, they met the 2.5 cars, it's a total impact of 25 vehicles. But Five Below for that site has set aside 52 spaces within that unit because they're 13,000 square feet. So, you know, we obviously fit within their area. And so that's why we don't think it's going to be an overall negative impact to the facility. The other thing also is in that 2012 study, which I know you're saying is dated, but the reality is that study is actually reflective of the same exact stores that exist in that promenade today as they did in 2012, with the exception of one, which changed hands, but is the same use. And overall, the maximum at any point in time that parking field reached capacity was on a Saturday at 2 p.m. where it would hit close to 70% of occupancy, which is still 30% open of an open field. You know, and 30% of an open field of 1,000 cars, over 300 cars, our impact is not going to, at any point in time, even if you were to count one person per car, 62, we still would not exceed or wipe out that entire space. The other thing also to be aware of is that our peak time is not 2 p.m. on a Saturday. Our peak time actually runs between 5 and 6 o'clock, Monday through Thursday. And then on Saturday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're usually around 6 o'clock is our peak moment when most of the people will be in there. And again, that's assuming that the facility is filled to every single computer at 62. The reality is that's not what's going to happen. I mean, I would love for it to be filled to capacity every single day of every single hour, but it's just not. I mean, usually what you're looking at is about 70% of occupancy. So that means 70% of the car count that we're talking about. So closer to a 14 or 15 car impact based on our figure. If you don't like our car count figure, let's say we bring it down to 2, that still puts you at 25 to 30 cars at a 70%, of occupancy figure. So I do think it's a solid figure that would work. And I'll let site centers comment more on it, but they're not in the interest of making it difficult for their consumers to go to these different places. They want the site to be successful. And we believe that part of what we're going to wind up doing is driving more business into micro centers. And quite frankly, I'm hopeful that they do get more business and they become more busy and that parking becomes even more difficult of an issue, because that means you have a very successful shopping center. And I'd be super excited to be able to have contributed to that. And at the same time, hopefully micro center might even grow or take up additional square footage if necessary, or other stores like that in the area.
I hear what you're saying. I'm familiar with Lakewood. My son used to live there.
Oh, nice.
Colorado people bike. I bicycle. I don't think anyone is going to bicycle to this store. It's simply not a safe location if you've looked at it from a bicyclist point of view. If Dodge is a problem, I realize that ownership may be an issue, but perhaps what's needed is signage towards the middle of the parking area that says reserved for Dodge customers. And that would keep people in those middle spaces. The other thing that you haven't allowed for is that this is a gathering place occasionally for people leaving town. Assuming the COVID scare is over, people will charter a bus to go to Washington, Missouri or somewhere. They will meet in the Brentwood Promenade because they leave their cars there. The bus is meeting, they get out of their cars, they go away for the day, they leave their cars. We haven't figured out a way to stop this, but it adds 60 cars to the shopping center whenever this happens. So it's a multiple use thing. It depends on the day. Especially as I was saying at Christmas, employees don't always park as far away or behind buildings as they could. So starting Thanksgiving, there are a number of Ward 4 residents who don't use the promenade if they can avoid it because of the parking. So I hear what you're saying. I think it's the only negative about this whole project. Other than that, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Alderwoman. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Alderwoman O'Neill. Do we have any other questions?
This is Keith from Site Centers. Would you like me to respond to anything, Ms. Alderwoman O'Neill, or?
If you'd like to go ahead, Keith, this would be a great time if you've got some information on the parking.
Well, I can tell you that it's a very good thing to have if we had a parking issue, to have a parking issue being a shopping center. And I can tell you that based off of our experience as a shopping center owner across the country, especially during the holidays, there's always parking issues. But I think if we approach this on a store level and property management level, i.e. meaning our property managers can go in and talk to the tenants, have your employees park away from the front door. So that's more of a store level restriction or rule that we can have the tenants talk to their employees about. Now, as far as the DOD, DOD only has an access agreement with site centers. They do not have a parking agreement. So we can work with them, and if it becomes an issue, then we can work with them even more to try to solve and maybe put an area in for them. But again, they don't have the right in their lease because they're not our tenant, and all they have is an access agreement, not a parking agreement. So we have some flexibility in there. And again, those are only times when the cars are being dropped off. And there's a couple hour difference between when they, I'm talking with my hands, you can't see me, of course, but there's a moment of time of when the consumers drop it off and the service center takes them from our parking field into their space. But I truly believe that policing that with our property management group, we could really resolve a lot of parking issues that you might have.
Thank you. That would be a good idea. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Purnell, and to your team.
Thank you, Your Honor. And to all.
Next on the agenda is item 11B. That's bill number 6299, and I think we're going to try and do a first and second reading on that tonight. So, Mr. City Attorney, can we get a first reading by title only, please?
Yes, sir. As soon as I can get it. There we go. Sorry about that. Bill number 6299, first reading, an ordinance amending section 500.160 of the city code regarding the city's relocation policy for certain development activities and repealing prior ordinances on the same subject.
Thank you. I'm guessing, Mark, are you going to handle this?
Yeah, I'm going to explain it briefly, hopefully. The genesis of this bill was to create an appeal process for relocation benefits for the Brentwood Bound project. Right now, our relocation policy did not have a specific appeals process. And so we drafted an appeals process for the city to adopt. That's part of this ordinance. But in doing that, we looked at the city's current relocation policy and noted that there were some parts of it that predated statutory changes in 2006. And so doing this, using this as an opportunity to update the entire relocation policy, we basically went back and updated the relocation policy to better reflect the 2006 statutory enactments. And so the highlights of that include expanding the definition of business to include nonprofits and veterans organizations, which our policy previously did not include. Allowing month-to-month tenants to be eligible for benefits, which is part of the 2006 statutes. Expanding the notification requirements to tenants. Clarifying that an owner cannot waive his tenant's benefits without his tenant agreeing to do so. And increasing the compensation to match what's required in the statute. So that's a high-level overview of what this ordinance is intended to do. An added benefit is now upon enactment, the city's relocation policy will be found in the Code of Ordinances available online as well. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for people to look at what the ordinance relocation policy for the city of Brentwood is.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for Mark about this? Okay, like I said, we're trying to do a second read on this tonight. So with that, can we get a motion for a second read?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderwoman O'Neill, seconded by Alderwoman Sims. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no, nay. Okay, motion carries. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second reading of Bill 6299 by title only, please?
Bill number 6299, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance amending section 500.160 of the city code regarding the city's relocation policy for certain development activities and repealing prior ordinances on the same subject.
Great, thank you. Can we get a motion to perfect Bill number 6299 into ordinance form?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderwoman Sims, I think seconded by Alderman Gould. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Kelly?
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderwoman Ebling.
Yes.
That was it, right? We had that was all 8. I lost track.
That was all 8. Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. So the motion to perfect carries by a count of 8-0. We move on to item 12, citizen comments. And once again, this is the opportunity for anybody in the public who cares to address the board. Now is your time to do so. And again, you will be given up to 3 minutes to address the board.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, great. Then can we get a motion to go into closed session pursuant to legal RSMO 610.021 subsection 1 and real estate RSMO 610.021 subsection 2?
So moved.
Your Honor, I make a motion that we adjourn to a executive session, closed session, for the purposes of discussing legal matters under revised Missouri statutes, chapter 610.021, subsection 1, and pursuant to questions of real estate under revised Missouri statutes, chapter 610.021, subsection 2, and adjourn from our meeting therefrom.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Plufka and seconded by Alderwoman Sims. Any discussion on that? Okay, Kelly, can we get a roll call, please?
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderwoman Ebling.
Yes.
All 8 have approved.
Okay, great. All right, everybody. You should have received, thank you, Mr. Perno, again, and we will see you in, I guess, a couple of weeks at the next meeting. And so we will, you should have received a link by now to go into closed session via Zoom. I'm sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
I haven't sent it yet. I will send when we adjourn. I will
okay.
A short break, and then we'll send those to you, and you'll have those available in a few minutes.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, go ahead.
Just go ahead and send it.
What's
no
that?
break. I don't need a break. Let's just get into it.
Well, just go ahead. Go ahead and send it, Kelly. I did get one that said starting at 8:30, but okay. All right. Well, we'll see each other and everybody in a few minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.